They ignored my birthday until I taught them a lesson they'll never forget. I woke up to no wishes, no balloons, just silence. And before you roll your eyes thinking, oh, another lonely birthday story, hear me out. This wasn't some one-off. This was tradition, ritual, a family talent, if you will. Every year, without fail, my birthday slid past like a ghost ship, unseen, unfelt, uncelebrated. And somehow everyone acted like it wasn't a big deal. Well, for them, it wasn't. For me, it was another reminder that in the family I lived with, I was basically invisible. I stared at the ceiling for a few minutes, letting the morning sunlight filter through my blinds. Too bright, too cheerful, definitely mocking me. I rolled over to check my phone, half expecting a single happy birthday message from someone, anyone, but nothing, nada. My group chat was quiet. My notifications were quiet. My mom didn't text. My dad didn't call. My sister didn't even send me a meme. I sighed and sat up, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. It was my 25th birthday. 25. A quarter century spent perfecting the art of being ignored. And yet, some part of me still clung to hope that maybe, just maybe, this year would be different. Cue the family entering the room. Morning, my mom muttered, eyes glued to her phone, thumb scrolling like it was life or death. Happy, Thursday? My dad said, glancing at me as if he'd just noticed I existed, then promptly returned to whatever email or newsfeed had captured his attention. My sister, lounging on the couch with earbuds in, didn't even look up. She was busy watching some TikTok compilation of people failing at life. Irony was lost on her, apparently. I gave a small, forced smile. Good morning, I said, trying to sound normal. Neutral, nonchalant, nothing worked. Silence. I remembered last year I had tried something subtle, like leaving my birthday cake out on the counter with a note that said, maybe someone will notice me today. My sister had walked past it, taken a sandwich, and then left crumbs on the plate. My parents had stared at it briefly and assumed it was just another leftover dessert from someone else. That was fine. Totally fine. Nothing says love like being completely ignored. I dragged myself to the kitchen, pretending not to notice the familiar pit in my stomach. Mom hummed something that might have been a song. Dad mumbled under his breath, probably a grocery list or stock prices. And my sister? She grunted a hello that sounded more like a sneeze. I guess it's my birthday today, I said casually, as if announcing it might spark some memory in their heads. Mom didn't look up. Dad muttered, oh yeah, cool, without missing a beat. And my sister? She scrolled past me without so much as a blink. I felt my chest tighten. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was a sharp, familiar sting. Loneliness dressed up as disappointment. I tried to laugh it off. I really did. I told myself, maybe it's not about the cake or the party. Maybe it's about who you are, right? But even my own words felt hollow. At work, I tried to distract myself. My colleagues were busy with their own birthdays and office gossip, oblivious to the drama unfolding at home. I half smiled as I responded to their morning chatter about weekend plans. I was present, but absent, a ghost in my own life. Then came lunch. I ordered my favorite pizza and sat in the break room, staring at it like it was a consolation prize. My phone buzzed. A single notification from a friend I hadn't spoken to in months. Hey, happy birthday. Hope your day's better than last year, LOL. My lips curved into a small, sad smile. That one tiny message was like a lighthouse in a storm. Someone remembered. Someone cared. Not my family, but someone else did. By the time I got home, the house was the same. Unchanged, silent. My mom had rearranged the couch cushions. Dad was in his office pretending to work, and my sister was lying on her bed, headphones blasting whatever noise teenagers consider music these days. I sat down on the couch and stared at them. Really stared. And for the first time in a long while, I let myself imagine a different kind of birthday. A family that noticed me, celebrated me, maybe even told me they loved me without me having to beg or hint. The memories hit hard. My 10th birthday, when I got socks. My 15th, when I didn't even get a card. My 20th, when my friends surprised me and I cried because my own family didn't even say a word. Each year stacked like bricks on my chest, heavier than the last. And yet, somehow I was still standing, still smiling, still waiting for them to see me. But that night, as I sat alone with my pizza, a new thought sparked. A small, dangerous thought. A thought that made my heart race with excitement and fear all at once. This year, I wouldn't let them forget, but not in the way they'd expect. I started plotting immediately. Subtle at first, observing every routine, noting every predictable behavior. My dad's obsession with news alerts, my mom's addiction to Instagram, my sister's TikTok scrolling marathons. Everything was data. Everything was ammunition. I wasn't angry. Not exactly. I was strategic, focused, and for the first time in years, I felt a thrill I hadn't felt since childhood. Power, control, the knowledge that I could turn this day into something unforgettable, not just for me, but for them. As I went to bed that night, I didn't feel lonely. I felt alive, because for the first time in a long time, I realized birthdays weren't just about being noticed, they were about making yourself impossible to ignore. And that was exactly what I intended to do. They thought I was invisible. I was invisible for a reason. After the cold, silent birthday morning, I realized that if I wanted to be seen, I couldn't wait for my family to magically notice me. No, I had to take matters into my own hands. And by take matters into my own hands, I didn't mean a cake, candles, or some awkward group hug. No, this year, I planned something bigger, something unforgettable, something that would make them stop ignoring me long enough to realize exactly what they had been missing for the past 25 years. It started small, really small. I began by observing them like a scientist studying an experiment that had gone wrong decades ago. My dad, for instance, had a ritual of reading the news at exactly 7:15 a.m. while mumbling something about the stock market. My mom scrolled Instagram, liked posts at random, and had a tendency to leave half-finished lattes around the house. My sister, well, she lived in her own universe, entirely powered by TikTok and questionable snacks. Knowing their routines meant I could plan my moves carefully. Step 1. Gather intel without raising suspicion. So I acted like an average, nonchalant family member while secretly charting their daily behaviors in a notebook I kept hidden under my bed. My observations ranged from the mundane, dad's obsession with notifications, to the ridiculous, mom's uncanny ability to ignore someone standing in front of her asking for the time. Step 2. Enlist help without the obvious. I reached out to a few friends who owed me small favors and had impeccable taste in chaos. Let's call them my unofficial co-conspirators. One of them, Alex, was an event planner for small-scale corporate parties but secretly loved dramatic pranks. Another, Jenna, was a tech wizard, the kind who could set up a phone to send perfectly timed reminders or notifications to anyone in the house without them noticing. Perfect allies for my little revolution. Step 3. Create the illusion of normalcy. My family couldn't suspect a thing. So during the day, I went about my usual routine, answering emails, doing laundry, chatting about mundane topics like the weather or the neighbor's new dog. Look, I'm boring, just like I always am, I thought, pretending to be harmless. Little did they know, I was plotting a symphony of subtle, strategic chaos. Next came the fun part, assembling my tools of recognition. I decided to combine physical gifts, symbolic gestures, and a few carefully crafted psychological nudges. I bought decorations, streamers, balloons, a banner that read, "Finally Not Ignored," and stashed them in the closet where my family never looked. I also prepared a series of small notes, each detailing a memory or a joke only my family would understand, but with a twist. They'd all be revealed only during my birthday event. Gathering supplies turned into a covert operation. Walking through the living room with a balloon in one hand and sticky notes in the other, I passed my dad pretending to be interested in the TV. "Oh, is that the stock market news again?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He grunted and turned the volume up. Victory. Unnoticed. Mom walked past with her latte. Didn't see a thing. Another victory. My sister? She gave me a look like I had suddenly grown an extra head. Not suspicious, just her standard teenage glare. Step 4. Success. Of course, nothing went perfectly. Alex suggested some extra flair, like filling the hallway with confetti poppers. But when I tried a test run, I ended up with glitter in my hair and a sticky trail across the kitchen floor. My mom walked in just then, gave me one of her signature, "You need a hobby" looks, and left. I laughed to myself. Perfect cover. Nobody suspected a thing. Meanwhile, Jenna was orchestrating the digital side of my plan. She helped me set up notifications that would appear on my parents' phones and laptops at precisely timed intervals. The notifications weren't just reminders. They were cleverly worded hints, like, "Notice something today?" or "You might want to check the living room." Little breadcrumbs to lead them to the big reveal. The more I worked, the more I realized how much fun this was. There was a thrill in watching my family unknowingly help me prepare the very surprise they didn't know was coming. Each mundane action they took, every careless glance, every ignored question, I turned it into a piece of the puzzle. My invisibility was my superpower. My neglect was my inspiration. By the third day of preparations, the house was a labyrinth of secret notes, hidden decorations, and silent reminders. I'd even rehearsed my entrance, the way I would appear, the exact moment I would catch their attention. Timing was everything. I didn't want anger, I didn't want tears, I wanted awe, shock, recognition. I started imagining their reactions. My dad, fumbling with his glasses, staring at the first note he'd find. My mom, half horrified, half amused, as the first balloon popped open with a message. My sister, finally tearing her eyes away from her phone, realizing that all these years I had been quietly collecting memories, jokes, and reminders of every little thing that mattered. Of course, planning wasn't all fun and games. There were tense moments too. I had to ensure my siblings didn't accidentally ruin the surprise. One day, my sister wandered into the secret storage room and nearly discovered the decorations. I managed to distract her with a story about a new TikTok trend, and she wandered off, headphones blasting again. Close call. My heart was racing. Close calls became part of the thrill, like playing chess with invisible pieces where the stakes were personal vindication. Even my parents, unknowingly, contributed. My dad left a box of unopened birthday cards from years past in the hallway, which I repurposed as part of my final presentation. My mom forgot a stack of gift wrapping in the corner, which became an impromptu backdrop for the display of neglect turned into triumph. Every tiny detail worked in my favor. By the evening before my birthday, everything was almost in place. Notes were scattered strategically, notifications queued perfectly, decorations hidden but ready to be revealed, and my friends briefed to assist if necessary. The anticipation was electric. I felt alive, like a conductor ready to lead an orchestra no one knew existed. Sitting on my bed, reviewing my plan one last time, I smiled. Tomorrow, they'd see me. Not just in the superficial way, like saying happy birthday because it's polite. They'd see me in a way that was undeniable, unavoidable, unforgettable. And the best part? I wouldn't have to beg, I wouldn't have to hint, I wouldn't even have to scowl. My invisibility had been my shield, my advantage, my secret weapon. Tomorrow, I would pull it off. And nothing. Not even 25 years of being ignored would stop me from finally being noticed. I walked in, and suddenly, all eyes were on me. Not the polite, half-hearted glance that I'd been used to my whole life. No. This was the kind of attention that made the room stop. The kind that sucked the air out of the space for a moment and left people reeling. The house smelled faintly of baked goods, thanks to Jenna, who had orchestrated a covert baking session while Mom was out running errands. Streamers hung from the ceiling, every balloon carefully positioned with a note tucked inside, each message like a breadcrumb leading to a moment my family would never forget. On the dining table, I had set up a display, a mix of childhood photos, little mementos, and a sarcastic sign that read, "The birthday you almost forgot again." I paused at the doorway, pretending to tie my shoelaces and watch. Dad's eyes were wide, unblinking. Mom froze mid-step, latte in hand. My sister literally dropped her phone. And for a brief, beautiful second, the world was silent. I took a deep breath and started. "Good evening," I said, my voice calm, deceptively casual. "Or, I guess, happy birthday to me?" Dad blinked. "Wait, what?" I smiled, walking toward the dining table. "Yes, my birthday. That one day a year when I exist for you all. Remember that?" Mom's face twisted in confusion. "But we didn't." "Exactly," I interrupted gently, almost teasingly. "You didn't. Not once. Not ever, apparently. So I decided to help you remember. Tonight, you get to meet me fully." Then came the first balloon pop. My sister, still in shock, jumped back. Inside was a note. "Remember when I saved your math project in 5th grade because you forgot to do it?" I remember. Laughter, nervous and guilty, escaped my mom. Dad adjusted his glasses, reading a second note. "I endured 25 years of being ignored. I am patient, but patience has limits." I saw the shame creep into their eyes, but it was laced with humor. I wasn't here to destroy them. I was here to make them see me, to feel the absurdity of all the birthdays I had spent in the shadows. I walked to the center of the living room. "Let's go through some highlights, shall we?" I said, pulling out a stack of cards and photos I had gathered. I started with my 10th birthday, a single pair of socks from my aunt that I had cherished, only to have my parents forget to even tell me happy birthday. Mom laughed nervously, rubbing her temples. Dad coughed, pretending to check his watch. Classic denial. Then came the teenage years, the cruel mix of indifference and awkward, "you'll grow out of it" remarks. I held up a photo from my 15th birthday, a cake I had baked myself because nobody else remembered, candles crooked, frosting half smudged. "See this?" I said. "This is what it looks like when you're invisible." But I kept smiling, always smiling, waiting. By now, my sister was sitting cross-legged on the floor, staring at me with wide eyes. I could see her internal panic. Did I really ignore them that much? She opened her mouth, tried to apologize, but words failed her. Perfect. I wanted acknowledgement, not excuses. The emotional tide turned when I held up a note I had written the night before. Being invisible isn't just being ignored. It's being forgotten. It's being unacknowledged. But it also made me strong, creative, and patient. Too patient sometimes. My voice cracked slightly, the first raw emotion of the night breaking through the humor and spectacle. Mom finally spoke, softly. I didn't realize." Her voice faltered. I nodded. "Exactly. You didn't. And that's the point. You weren't trying to hurt me. You just forgot every single year. But tonight, we're fixing that." Then came the piece de resistance, a small slideshow I had secretly put together with Alex's help. It was a montage of moments they didn't know I remembered. My first bike ride, the school play they missed, the time my cat got stuck in the tree and I climbed to save it while everyone laughed. Every photo, every video clip, punctuated with captions, funny, sarcastic, honest, reminded them that I was here all along, watching, remembering, waiting for them to notice. Dad laughed, nervously at first, then genuinely. "You actually did all this?" I shrugged, feigning modesty. "I just had to make sure you finally got it." Then I paused, looking each of them in the eye. I've spent years pretending it didn't bother me, making jokes about it, hiding behind smiles, but it did. It hurt. And tonight, I want you to feel it with me. Not as punishment, but as a lesson. Recognition matters. Acknowledgement matters. Love matters. Mom's eyes glistened. She reached out, hesitated, then touched my arm. My sister leaned forward, finally speaking the words I had longed to hear. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." "Shh," I said softly, cutting her off, not to dismiss, but to shift the focus. "You didn't know, and that's okay. That's what tonight is about. Knowing, seeing, remembering. We laughed awkwardly at first, then more freely. There were tears, yes, but also smiles, the kind that didn't feel forced or polite. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen, not just acknowledged with a card or a cake, but truly undeniably seen. And as the night unfolded, I realized something else. This wasn't just about me. It was about all the small moments we forget in families, the unspoken, the ignored, the overlooked. Tonight, I reminded them and myself why those moments mattered. By the end of the evening, the room was a mess of confetti, sticky notes, half-eaten cake, and laughter echoing through the house. But more importantly, the invisible had become visible. The ignored had been noticed. And for the first time, my family understood. I wasn't just a background character in their lives. I was central, vital, unforgettable. And they weren't about to forget it again. They finally saw me, but it was more than just my birthday. The morning after the big reveal, I woke up to a quiet house, but it felt different. Not just the calm after the confetti storm. This was the kind of silence that carries understanding. I got out of bed, stretched, and noticed something small but significant. A sticky note on my bathroom mirror that simply said, "We see you." Really, it was from my mom. I smiled and left it there, untouched for a moment, just letting it sink in. For 25 years, I had been invisible to the people who should have loved and noticed me most, and now they were finally trying. Tentatively, awkwardly, but sincerely. Breakfast was the first real test of this new reality. Dad actually called out, "Hey, happy belated birthday," while Mom set out pancakes without muttering anything about her phone. My sister even asked if she could help pour syrup. I laughed at the small victory. It wasn't fireworks or grand gestures, but it was progress. Over the next few days, I started noticing subtle changes everywhere. My dad, who used to disappear into his emails or news apps, started asking me about my work. Not out of obligation, but genuinely. Mom lingered in the kitchen while I made coffee, talking about my plans for the week. My sister, well, she actually shared a meme with me instead of ignoring me. These little moments weren't just gestures, they were signals. They were acknowledgement, slowly rebuilding bridges that had been crumbling for decades. Of course, change didn't happen overnight. There were missteps. Dad once accidentally referred to my birthday as that day, and my sister rolled her eyes mid-apology. Mom tried to help with chores but managed to spill juice on the counter. And yet, every time I laughed instead of scolding, offered gentle guidance instead of passive-aggressive hints, I realized something crucial. I was no longer dependent on them to validate my existence. I had my own dignity, my own agency, and that was powerful. One evening, I decided to sit down with the three of them in the living room. Candles flickered softly on the table, a quiet echo of the spectacle we'd orchestrated just days before. I looked at them all and said, "I want to thank you, not for finally noticing my birthday, though that's great, but for trying, for being willing to learn to see me. That's all I ever wanted." My dad blinked, a little misty-eyed. We didn't know," he admitted, voice low. "We just took things for granted." "And my mom added, hesitating, "I realize now that being present matters more than anything I could buy you. I'm sorry for the years I missed." My sister, unusually soft-spoken, said, I'm going to try harder, okay? I don't want to take you for granted anymore." She looked embarrassed but sincere, and for the first time, I felt the weight of 25 years lift slightly. In the weeks that followed, life didn't magically become perfect, but it became real. My family wasn't flawless, and neither was I, but we laughed more, talked more, and shared small victories together. Dad and I started going for short evening walks to talk about work, sports, or just nonsense. Mom and I cooked together once a week, trying new recipes and failing gloriously. My sister and I had movie nights where we actually argued over which film to watch instead of ignoring each other. I realized that the greatest lesson of all wasn't about birthdays or gifts or even recognition. It was about communication, vulnerability, and asserting yourself without resentment. I had spent so long hiding my hurt behind humor and silence, but the moment I spoke, the moment I took action instead of waiting, everything shifted. I didn't need their acknowledgement to exist, but I wanted them to know it mattered. To all of us. There were moments of pride, too. Like the first time my dad remembered my birthday without a nudge, or when my mom bought a small, thoughtful gift just because, instead of the last-minute card she'd picked up at the checkout, or when my sister left a note in my backpack, just a little joke, but one that reminded me she knew me. Subtle wins, small victories, but meaningful. I also noticed the ways I'd changed. I no longer craved attention like a hollow need. I no longer flinched when they ignored me. I had grown stronger, more confident, more self-assured. I could laugh at past neglect instead of letting it fester. And I could give my family grace while still holding boundaries. One evening, as we all sat around the dinner table, I looked at them and said, lightly but sincerely, this was my best birthday ever. Not for the cake or the decorations or the confetti, but because you finally saw me. Really saw me. And that's unforgettable. Mom smiled, eyes glistening. Dad chuckled, a little awkwardly. My sister rolled her eyes playfully but gave me a small, genuine grin. And in that moment, I realized something profound. I didn't need perfection. I didn't need grand gestures. I just needed acknowledgement and the willingness to grow together. That was enough. That was everything. And so, as I went to bed that night, I let myself feel it fully. The warmth of being seen, the joy of being heard, and the quiet pride of knowing that I had turned years of neglect into a moment of connection. That birthday, once destined to be another blank stare in my life, had become a turning point. Not just for them, but for me. Because sometimes, the best gifts aren't wrapped in paper or tied with ribbons. Sometimes, the best gifts are being seen, being heard, and being loved, even if it takes 25 years to get there. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled without reservation. I was no longer invisible. All right, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the story. We have so many more amazing stories coming your way, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to reach 100K subscribers by the end of this year, and we'd love for you to be part of this journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.